Okay, so so here we are in our talk on the 7 stages of the sevenfold puja. And next week, we're actually going to do a sevenfold puja, so we can put into action all that we've talked about during these weeks. So you can spend the weekend, if you're not on the retreat, watching all those talks, so that you're just ready for the puja next week. So and these are the 7 stages of that lead to the bodhicitta, lead to the arising of the enlightenment. And they're attitudes that we cultivate in our everyday life, as well as when we're doing the puja, the ritual. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of my own experience of why the Bodhisattva ideal, the arising of the bodhicitta, why it's what I dedicate my life to. So I think my experience was that when I first started coming along to the center and I started practicing meditation, particularly metta actually, I started to get a taste of how it might be to live from a place of generosity, of wishing other people well, of more clarity. And I became more and more aware of how unhappy it made me actually when I was acting from a sense of me first. How unhappy it makes me now when I act from a sense of me first, and how sort of grubby and sordid it could feel sometimes when it was all about me. And an example from when I first came along to the center was I went along to a work meeting, and these would happen every 3 months or so. And I found these meetings really intimidating. I thought the people that went to the meetings were really kind of high-flying, high-powered people. And they came from lots of different organizations. So there's a little bit of kind of competing going on. And what I try to do is think really hard about how I could look clever in the ideas of these people. Because basically, actually, I didn't feel really good enough to be there. So I really thought I have to pretend really hard to look like I'm clever and say some really intelligent things or something. And of course, that made me really tense because I was just thinking all the time about me. When am I going to be able to say something clever? What will it be? That kind of thing. And I was just coming from this real place of just thinking about me. But we'd been talking at the Buddhist Center about, maybe it's not all about me, maybe there's a much bigger picture. So what I tried in this meeting was to stop obsessing about me and how I was coming across, and to think about the task that we were trying to do together, what this meeting was about and what we were trying to attain by doing it together. And the whole experience was so much more enjoyable. I was so much more relaxed. And of course, because I was relaxed, I was able to just kind of give to the meeting in a way that was helpful rather than this kind of obsession with me. And how can I show these people how amazing I am? So I had various experiences like that, very tastes of this. And I thought I'd really like to live more and more from this orientation, from this perspective. And people talked about the Bodhisattva ideal, this being who is, their whole life is about living for enlightenment for all beings, for the sake of all beings. And it just seems so beautiful to me, like the most ultimate thing that a human being can do with our precious lives. And I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do with my life as much as I can in my limited way. I want to work towards being a bodhisattva or part of a bodhisattva. So I looked around for how do you do that? And one of the traditional suggestions of how you become a bodhisattva is to do the sevenfold puja regularly. Many, many times, I think, and many times to do the puja. And as well as, developing it in the puja, we develop those attitudes in our life that they include. So, so what we do when we go through a puja is we go through various stages. And that's why I've got this board here. So we start with, by creating as beautiful a mind as we can, a mind and heart as we can in ourselves, and inviting in the qualities that we admire, that we yearn for, that are embodied in the Buddha and other archetypal forms. And then we celebrate in salutation, we celebrate how wonderful they are. And then we move on to the confession to go for refuge, which is where we make an intention, a vow even, that we're going to put that at the center of our lives. We're going to put the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha at the center of our lives. But we move on to the confession section. We see that, of course, we fall short of that. And we decide that we're going to do what we can to overcome what's getting in the way of us doing that. Then with the rejoicing in merit section, we think, we just rejoice in all the goodness and the beauty that there already is. All the Buddhas have already been, the ways that so many people are practicing together, the idea of the Bodhisattva ideal, and also the beauty in ourselves as well, and what we are trying to do. And then from this very positive state of mind, well, we go to the entreaty and supplication, where we ask for help. And we ask for help from the archetypal Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and as Bodhinaga talked about very beautifully last week. And we're receptive to the wisdom. We ask for wisdom and we are receptive to it to the best of our ability. So by now, we've got right down to here, and we're hopefully, in theory, in a really positive state of mind. Doing really well. Lots of, that's really good. So what we need to do then is, now we've got all that, well, then we give it all away. So then we just let it go. All that we've acquired by all this that we've done, we give it away. So this is the transference of merit and self-surrender verses of the Puja, which we're talking about today. And there are several versions around that we use in Sheffield. So I'm going to read both. So the first is the shorter version. And this book, hold it to the camera, is Ritual and Devotion in Buddhism by Sangha Night. I'd really recommend it. There's quite a lot of copies in the library. And it's a really good, if you want to explore ritual and devotion in Buddhism, it's the place to go. So, and most of what I say today comes from this book, actually. So, so the short version of Transference of Merit and Self-Surrender. May the merit gained in my acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. My personality throughout my existences, my possessions, and my merit in all three ways, I give up without regard to myself for the benefit of all beings. Just as the earth and other elements are serviceable in many ways to the infinite number of beings inhabiting limitless space, so may I become that which maintains all beings, situated throughout space, so long as all have not attained to peace. So that's the short version, and then the longer version. With no sense of loss, I give myself to the Buddhas. I give my merits for the benefit of all. May I be the doctor, may I be the nurse for all beings until the world is cured. May I be a light for those who are lost. May I be a harbor for those that need shelter. Like the earth and the water, like the fire and the air, may I be a servant to beings on earth until the world is whole. Just as the Buddhas before me set their minds on enlightenment, just as they trained on the Buddha's path, so now I too, for the welfare of the world, set my mind on enlightenment. So now I too will train on the Buddha's path. Today, in the presence of the Buddhas, I invite the world to be my guest at a great feast of delight. May all beings rejoice. So both of those are taken from the Bodhicharya Avatara, which is a kind of a guide to becoming a bodhisattva, written by Shantideva. And both of them in different ways are expressing the same process, the same emotions, the same attitude to life. So I'm going to talk about, so what is merit, this merit that we are going to transfer? How do we transfer it and who to? And then what is self-surrender? And then a little bit about the alleviation of suffering, what was meant by that. And yeah, I just think it's really important that this is not just in the puja, it is in our whole lives. And I think what a beautiful way it would be to live as if we were always taking part in a puja, always bringing to mind what is most beautiful and important to us, so that everything that we did was an act of devotion to these most lovely, these highest values that we hold. So I suppose there's something about maybe the more we do the puja, when we're in good conditions, we can actually start to live more of our lives from that same place. So let's look at merit. So merit comes from the word punya. Punya, and that's all the benefits that we've gained from our practice. So every time we meditate or we act ethically, we're becoming kinder, we're becoming wiser, we're becoming more aware, more positive, more resilient. And all of this is our merit, what we've gained, what we've been given through our practice. And in this part of the puja, we give it away, we transfer it all, we transfer everything away. So that's what merit is. So how do we give it away? Well, first of all, it's obviously not literal. It's not literal. You can't kind of somehow get in your head or something and pull out your merit. It's an attitude. So it's about it's not transferring literally from one person to another. Though, however, it has been interpreted at some times in Buddhist culture, probably still is actually, in that way. So a person might spend years meditating, being very ethical, maybe being a monk or a nun, build up loads of merit, and then sell it to somebody else so that they can go maybe set up a business or something like that. So you could think about that. You could think this is an investment, being at Sangha Night tonight. You might be able to sell it to someone in the future. But yeah, I mean, that is like, I think, last week when Bodhinaga was talking about the wisdom of the Heart Sutra, it's this kind of really trying to act against literalism, which is a really common thing when we can do in our Buddhist practices. We hear the Dharma and we take it very, very literally. So this is much more of a poetic inner attitude, the transference of merit. And we need it because in the structure of language, it's really hard to talk about spiritual life in ways that aren't about accumulation. So it's about gaining this or developing that, attaining the other. And if we're not careful, that can lead into a kind of refined selfishness. It becomes all about me and me getting better at being me, actually, being better at being me. And I suppose that because we live in a culture where there's a lot of self-development, it's really easy for those to seem like what we're doing is self-development, becoming that. And actually, of course, we're not. We need to become healthy, happy human beings. But the ultimate aim is that we let go of that fixed sense of self. So in order to counteract this tendency of this refined selfishness, and also to think of our merits as being literally our own, as attaching to our egos, we have this idea that we give them away. So yes, we develop all the virtues, but then we share them so that everything that we do, we're doing to alleviate the suffering of all beings. Because, it is the sense of ego, and by that I mean a sense of a fixed self, a clinging, a tightness, a sense of separation from the flow of reality. This sense of ego, if that's the principal obstacle between us and enlightenment, we're not going to be able to get to enlightenment with simply accumulating these good actions, which we regard as our own, because actually we'll just end up thinking we're really amazing. Rather than, that's what it will lead to. So, so this is why we give it away. And also, otherwise, attaining enlightenment could become a bit of a competitive sport, like trying to get there before all the other bodhisattvas, trying to get all the merits for yourself. And and obviously it's not. So really we're saying is, I don't claim this merit for myself. May it just go out from me to the spiritual benefit of all living beings, because that's what I'm really interested in. And we can't transfer our merits unless we will very positively towards other beings. So the metta bhavana is really important. And in fact, we could see this stage of the puja as a metta bhavana. So, we start, with ourselves, and then we radiate out to include everybody. And that's whether we like them or not, whether we know them or not, whether they're like us or very different from us. So this stage of the puja is very much including all beings. And that challenges our natural tendency to prefer some people. So we like some people, we dislike some people, we don't know other people. And what we're doing in this is we want to be of benefit to all beings, whatever relationship we have with them, whether we know them or not, like them or not. And we can see it as a training that we're just trying to include more and more people in that. And obviously that's a slow process. That's a real slow process. And we're slowly wearing away at this tendency we have to see ourselves as the center of the universe, to be concerned mostly with what's going on for us. And we want to keep things nice for us. And so when things are going well, we want to kind of hold on to it. And when we're suffering, well, that can separate us as well, because we can feel like we're uniquely suffering and that this suffering separates us from other beings. So, we can actually use whatever our experience is to connect with the common experience of all sentient beings. And outside of the puja, we can connect with, however we are, we can connect with other people. So if we are suffering, so maybe we can't sleep, or we're ill, and maybe a relationship has ended, we've been bereaved, all the different ways that we can suffer, we can think of all the other people who are also suffering like we are. There's probably many millions of people actually throughout the world who will have exactly that same suffering that we have. And just like us, they'll be feeling sad and lonely, and we can wish them well. We can have a sense of solidarity with them. And that'll help us actually, because then we're no longer just caught up in our own suffering. We're actually connecting with the fact that, well, suffering is pretty universal human experience before enlightenment. But also, if we're happy, we can connect with other people. So maybe if we're in a really beautiful place, like, there's a really beautiful view. So when I remember, if I'm in a place with a really beautiful view, I try and connect with other people and wish that other people can also enjoy that feeling of that beautiful view when I remember to do it. But it might not just be that, it might be you've just had a great conversation with somebody, you're just unaccountably happy, whatever it is, you could think, I really want to share this with all beings. I really want all other beings to be as happy as I am. And that's a really helpful practice, actually, because it frees us up from that kind of grabbing onto our own happiness, if we can share it easily. And of course, it doesn't stop us sharing it doesn't stop us from being happy, probably makes us a little bit more happier. So that's a really good thing to practice as well, and to learn. I think another thing that we can do in our everyday lives outside the puja is dedication. So we can dedicate the activities we do. So from a Mahayana perspective, nothing we do, no virtuous action, is really complete until the merit from it has been dedicated to all beings. And what this does is this practice transforms what would otherwise be a very individual attainment into something much bigger, something more universal. So, we can do it before as well, before we do something, but particularly after we dedicate the merit that we've gained. So you could dedicate the merit from going to Sangha Night. When you leave, you could think, I'm going to dedicate this to all beings. I don't know if many people were able to be here when Hervé and Kevin did a very beautiful musical performance. And what I found particularly moving about it is that before and after they made offerings to the shrine. So it really felt that their music that they were making was not a kind of ego project about what wonderful musicians they are. It was much more about an offering that they were making to the Buddha and to us. And it was very beautiful, actually, to see that. So, whatever we do, if we dedicate it for the benefit of beings, then it will really widen out and really connect us with something more universal. So that's this idea of having merit and transferring it. And then the second part of this is self-surrender. So it's not just enough to give away our possessions, our merits. We need to give everything away, to let go of everything. And probably quite lucky that I just can't sing at all, because otherwise you'd be getting a version of Let It Go from Frozen right now. There's something about we can just let go of self-surrender. Is about letting go of all those false views of who we are that limit us. And there are different aspects to this. So a bodhisattva has fully surrendered themselves. They don't have any selfish interest anymore, even in their own good actions. They don't want to keep the merit to themselves so they can get to nirvana ahead of other beings. And actually that allows them in a sort of more mundane way not to worry about how they're seen. The bodhisattva doesn't mind appearing not to be a bodhisattva, and it's even fine not to look like they're a good person. So there's a kind of classic story about this of Hakuin. He was a Japanese practitioner. And the story goes that he was a monk, an ordained monk, and he was living in a village. And a woman claimed that he was the father of her baby. And of course, if you're an ordained monk, that's a really bad thing to have been for you to have done that. But he just said, okay, is it so? Took the baby and looked after the baby. So didn't get into any kind of like telling people about, what had really gone. After some years, he'd been looking after the child. The woman came back and she said, actually, he's not the father of the baby. I was just telling a story. And could I take the baby back? And he's just said, is it so? And and just kind of gave the baby back. So there's something there about a freedom from how other people think about you and from looking good in other people's eyes. Because what you want, what you're trying to do is what's best for all beings, not having all this worry about fame and how people think about you. So, so from an ordinary human point of view, like being so unconcerned about one's own good name, well, it's really understandable, isn't it? You know, we do live in a society and stuff where it's important how people see us. But from the highest spiritual point of view, it is this attachment to everything that needs to be given up. You know, we need to give up our personality, our possessions, our merit, and everything we do for the benefit of all beings. So this is a letting go of who we think we are, what we think gives us security. So we think that a sense of identity, of having a particular personality, a sense of owning certain possessions, that they give us this identity and they give us safety. But actually, the spiritual life is about letting go of all these false refuges so that we can allow something much bigger to arise in ourselves. But security, a sense of identity, possessions are not bad inherently and of themselves. What is unhelpful is our attachment to them, because this gives us this false sense of existing in separation from this flow of phenomena. And self-surrender is letting go of this attachment, really letting go. And I think that's why in both those verses that I read out, they talk about the elements. It's like, may I be the earth, may I be the water, because there's something very clean about the elements. It's like we can aspire to be of service to others, just as the earth is of service. The earth doesn't kind of tell itself a story about how wonderful it is, you know, when we walk on it. The air doesn't say how amazing it is or think it's doing a really good job when we breathe it in. It's just simply doing what is needed at the time. And that is, I think, that image of being like the elements is something that can really help us to think, how can I just really help in a way that is needed, not about me? So in this, it can feel like we're giving up a lot, and that could be very painful. But I think it's really important that we think that, well, saying these lines is about overcoming this very deep, very human way of being, instinctual way of being. And we're aspiring, we're training ourselves to see from a different perspective. You know, one day we would like to be free, and then we will freely give things away. But the longer version of the verses starts with no sense of loss. I give myself to the Buddhas. So there's a sense when we know that we're not losing anything when we do it. It's not painful. Sangha said renunciation is not painful, but in fact we'll be swooning with joy. So now just a little bit about alleviating suffering. So the aim of the transference of merit, self-surrender, is so that we are doing it to alleviate suffering for all beings. So how do we do this? How do we alleviate suffering? Well, I think I come back again and again, actually, I reflect very often on, well, is my practice alleviating the suffering of all beings? Would it be better to do something different, like maybe join a political party and try and change the laws? Would it be better to get mega rich so I had lots of money, billions to give away? Is this the best way that I'm spending my precious life? And again, I come back to the Buddhist analysis that at the heart of human suffering is greed, hatred, and ignorance. That's what is the problem. And even if I could give something billions of pounds to something, if it was coming from greed, hatred, and ignorance, it's just going to be making the problem worse, actually. So I need to come back to that analysis, and I haven't found a better one of how humans work. And so therefore, I feel like the best thing that I can do in terms of alleviating suffering is do what I can to set up the conditions for myself and others to overcome the greed, the hatred, the ignorance that gets us in such a mess. And of course, bearing in mind that, beings who are very oppressed by suffering, who are in deep hunger, extreme poverty, it's very difficult for them to practice. So we do need a certain level of conditions to practice. So, so for alleviating suffering is doing what we can ourselves to become stronger practitioners, so that we're no longer, part of the problem. We are this part of the solution. And it's about getting our own house in order so that our minds are as clear, as kind, as loving as they can be. And at the same time, as this like inner practice, we also need to have an outer expression of this internal intention, this intention for altruistic practice to alleviate suffering for all. So we need to actually be doing things. So yeah, not only do we work on ourselves, it's really important that we do what we can in the world. We start where we are and do what we can in small ways to make it better where we are. And that's why a Sangha is great to have a community part of where we can actually look out for each other and support each other. And there's something about having a very beautiful imagery to help us imagine how we could give that I think this longer version that we use of the Transference of Merit section, which comes more directly from the Bodhisattva. So there's some images in here, and as I read, you could be thinking, what works for you as a way of altruistic behavior, of helping alleviate suffering? So Shantideva said, "May I be the doctor, may I be the nurse for all beings until the world is cured. May I be a light for those who are lost. May I be a harbor for those that need shelter. Like the earth and the water, like the fire and the air, may I be a servant to beings on earth until the world is whole. So now I too, for the welfare of the world, set my mind on enlightenment." And then it ends with this lovely phrase, which is, "Today in the presence of the Buddhas, I invite the world to be my guest at a great feast of delight." And I love that actually what this is doing, it's leading to more delight in the world through us becoming stronger practitioners, working together with other people. We are leading to more delight in the world. Okay, so so we've got to this stage, which is quite very near the end of the puja. What happens after this stage is there are mantras, sometimes a mantra to Padmasambhava, and then a number of mantras that are to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So to Buddha Shakyamuni, Tara, Amitabha, for instance. And what I feel is that if we can really transfer our merits, if we can really self-surrender, give away our attachments, if we can let go of all that gets in the way, then a space can arise, a peace can arise, in which these mantras are the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas arising in our being. Yes, so we'll have a go at that next week. Yeah. So, as I said, it's good to dedicate whatever we do. So I shall dedicate this talk to the benefit of all of us and all beings, wherever we are, online or in person, and out in the world. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go into groups. I'll just say what the questions are before we say goodbye to the people on Zoom. So the first question might be slightly complicated. In what ways have other people benefited from you benefiting from the Dharma? Does that make sense? So for instance, I think my mum's benefited quite a lot from me not being quite so grumpy and whatever as I used to be. Do you see what I mean? So it's like, in what ways have other people benefited from you practicing the Dharma? And the second would be, would you like to use dedication more in your practice? Maybe after your meditation, maybe after mitra study, could you could you imagine doing more dedication of your merits? Okay, great. So we'll say goodbye to people on